world knows her as the formidable Annalise Keating, the fierce General Naniska, and the only black woman to achieve the Triple Crown of acting. But before the Oscars, the Emmys, and the global acclaim, Viola Davis was a little girl who lived in a literal house of horrors. Her story is not just one of success. It is a harrowing journey through the darkest corridors of the American experience, marked by starvation, systemic violence, and a soul-crushing poverty that almost swallowed her whole. Born in 1965 on her grandmother's sharecropper plantation in St. Matthews, South Carolina, Viola was the fifth of 6 children born into a cycle of generational curses that stretched back to slavery. Her family eventually moved to Central Falls, Rhode Island, but the change in geography didn't mean an escape from misery. The Davis family lived in condemned buildings where the plaster peeled off the walls like dead skin, and the plumbing was a luxury they often couldn't afford. In the dead of winter, the pipes would freeze solid, leaving them with no water to drink or wash with, forcing the children to walk to school in clothes that were stiff with filth and smelled of the urine they had shared in a single bed to keep warm. Hunger was not a temporary state for Viola. It was a constant, gnawing companion that drove her to do things no child should ever have to consider. She has spoken candidly about dumpster diving behind local grocery stores, scavenging for maggot-infested scraps just to stop the cramping in her stomach. She would steal from local corner stores, a desperate act that filled her with a paralyzing shame she would carry for decades. On the days she didn't steal or scavenge, she would wait for the school bell to ring, knowing that the free school lunch was the only meal she would see for 24 hours. This wasn't just a lack of money. It was an environmental trauma where rats were the undisputed masters of the house. Viola recalls the chilling sound of rats at night, hearing them literally chewing the faces off her dolls, while she and her sisters huddled together under the covers, too terrified to move, tying bed sheets around their necks so the rodents wouldn't bite their skin. But the external world was just as hostile as the home. As a dark-skinned black girl in a predominantly white poor community, Viola was a target for relentless, vicious bullying. Groups of boys would chase her home every single day after school, throwing rocks and bricks while screaming racial slurs, forcing her to run for her life before she had even reached the age of 10. Inside the home, the heartbreak took on an even more sinister form through the hands of her father, Dan Davis. An alcoholic and a man of immense physical strength, Dan subjected Viola's mother, May Alice, to brutal, systematic abuse. Viola remembers one night with haunting clarity when she was just 9 years old. She witnessed her father trying to break her mother's legs. The trauma was so intense that Viola experienced what she calls a mental break, screaming until her voice gave out, praying to a God she wasn't sure was listening to simply make her disappear. She would count to 10, closing her eyes with the desperate hope that when she opened them, she would be anywhere else. But she was always still there, in the dirt, in the trauma. Added to the physical violence was the silent agony of sexual abuse. Viola has since revealed that she and her sisters were victims of sexual assault at the hands of neighborhood predators and even members of their own extended family, a secret that was met with a devastating silence within the household. One of her sisters eventually succumbed to the weight of this trauma, falling into the grip of heroin addiction and a life of prostitution, a tragedy that Viola carries as a profound wound. The turning point came when Viola saw Cicely Tyson on television. It was a revelation that showed her a path out of the filth. She realized that acting wasn't just a hobby, it was a lifeline. She used her trauma as a fuel, pouring every ounce of her rage, her hunger, and her heartbreak into her performances. Even when she reached Juilliard, the prestigious drama school, she felt like an outsider, a dark-skinned woman with a wide nose in a world that wanted her to be smaller. She took roles she hated just to pay the bills, admitting that poverty is not the answer to craft, but rather a fire that forces you to survive. Even as she reached the pinnacle of Hollywood, the heartbreak didn't stop. She had to navigate the invisible tragedies of colorism in the industry, being told she wasn't pretty enough or refined enough for leading roles. However, her greatest act of bravery wasn't winning an Oscar. It was returning to her father's bedside as he was dying of pancreatic cancer and choosing to forgive him. She realized that forgiveness is giving up all hope of a different past. She watched the man who had once been her greatest terror become a man who spent his final days rubbing her mother's feet and apologizing for every blow he had ever struck. Today, Viola Davis stands as a beacon of black excellence, but she remains the girl from Central Falls who remembers the smell of the rats and the sting of the rocks. Her story is the ultimate testament to the human spirit's ability to crawl out of the dirt and filth and transform a life of tragedy into a legacy of triumph. If you found this deep dive into Viola's incredible journey moving, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. We are dedicated to bringing you the most powerful, untold stories of your favorite icons, and you won't want to miss our next emotional tribute. While you're at it, turn on the notification bell so you are the first to know the moment we drop a new video. Your support helps us keep these legacies alive and ensures we can continue sharing stories of resilience that deserve to be heard. Join our community of storytellers today. It only takes a second, but it makes a world of difference to the channel. Don't let these stories fade into the background. Stay connected and stay inspired. Subscribe now, and we'll see you in the next one.